What do you say, everybody? With Kyle Henderson, I'm Mick Gillispie, and here we are on the Bama Insider YouTube channel on a Sunday night. We're going to take your calls here coming up, and it is great to be here for the first time in 2022. Like and subscribe, hit the thumbs up as we start to talk about this Alabama-Georgia rematch. The Crimson Tide back in the national championship game, just like it was predicted by Kyle weeks ago. And now we have a second chance at Georgia. But before we talk any football, Happy New Year, partner. Did you make any New Year's resolutions?
New Year's resolutions. Well, I think that anytime, you start a new year, I think it's a time for, positivity and to kind of, start the new year with a mission. I'm a very A-type person, so I like to start the new year off right. I like to eat right. I like to, I'm one of those guys who likes like a clean notebook, and I like to like start from scratch. So I'm all about goals and all that stuff. And, in terms of New Year's resolutions, I think that, we're just going to continue to dominate. So I don't know if there's New Year's resolutions. I think it's just kind of all about, staying in the right mindset and continuing to grow this business as much as we can grow it.
Man, that was a great answer. I was just going to say I'm going to take a month. I'm going to go dry January. I'm going to try to work out a little bit harder. But dominating is a good thing too. I mean, like being motivated, and I'll tell you, everyone that's hanging out with us tonight, you guys know we really appreciate you being part of this channel. I mean, we're at 70,000 subscribers, and there's a lot of hard work that goes into this. Kyle's been the guy behind the channel since it started. Kyle, I don't know if you could have ever imagined it would turn into this, but when you need to know anything about Alabama, first and the best right here, I'm talking press conferences, I'm talking news, transfers, the obviously signing day, and all of that stuff. So congratulations on a great 2021.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's all about the subscribers. And I think the subscribers, they want to subscribe because they like the coverage. I mean, there's plenty of competition out there. There's other video channels that you could go check out. But you guys sticking with us, I think that, it means a tremendous amount. And one of the things that I've kind of coined is we appreciate you. And honestly, we do. We wouldn't be where we are without you. So 70,000, that's 70% of Bryant-Denny Stadium. My goal has always been to have as many subscribers as fits into Bryant-Denny Stadium, maybe double that one day. But, goal by goal. And as we turn to 70,000, we continue to pick off where we started 2021. And that's talking about another national championship as Alabama and Georgia get set for round 2 of this season.
Yeah, let's throw that up there. Let's get your thoughts on Alabama's 27-6 win in the Cotton Bowl over Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think when you look at this particular game, I mean, just as we were talking in the pre-show, Cincinnati clearly hadn't seen a running back like Brian Robinson. And I thought it was great execution by the team overall to really pound the rock. And I think that first drive really set the tempo for the entire game. I mean, can you imagine being Cincinnati and having to prepare for Alabama and being in that stage, that spotlight, thinking you have an opportunity, and then you get your first dose of Brian Robinson. You're like, ooh, that doesn't taste good. That's a lot different than East Carolina. That's a lot different than SMU. That's a lot different than Houston. Look, Cincinnati had a great season. Everything that they did this year, very respectable. I think Luke Fickell is a very good coach, but SEC football is a gauntlet, and Alabama is certainly battle tested. I wrote an article today talking about kind of how Nick Saban has transformed this sophomoric team into a national title contender. Of course, they still have to get through Georgia, but I think that first drive really set the tempo. Brian Robinson, I tweeted, he had his best game in his career. Think about it. He's played in over 60 games for the Alabama Crimson Tide, has over 200 yards. It was an imposing game. It was kind of like a throwback style, but as you and I were talking about in the pre-show, that was the game plan, to attack Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense, 44th ranked rushing wise. Everybody knows that their defense was very good in coverage. I think they're number 2 in the country pass defense. So why test those DBs when you can just go ground heavy with B-Rob?
Look, the offensive line was amazing, too, with the way that they were able to go out there and dominate in the run game as well. Even with some injuries, and we're going to get into the injuries on this team a little bit later in the show, it just seemed like we were starting to see, hey, finally got to look at Latham in the game, started to see this team like lean on Cincinnati and overpower them en route to a dominating win. And the defense, Kyle, is there, man. They are there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to point out the defense, and I really want to continue to give props to the defense as a whole. Pete Golding and his crew have done a great job in stopping Desmond Ritter and shutting down Jerome Ford. I knew that they were going to be able to, but you kind of even go back to the game against Georgia. I mean, how this defense and how this team overall has continued to transform has been really amazing. And when you kind of look to the defense overall this season, it's very young. I mean, there's a lot of guys coming back for next season. I don't think there's going to be two more that leave early to the NFL. If you go to Bama Insider, I have an article today talking about the starters against Cincinnati. You have Kool-Aid at freshman. He's a freshman. You have Jalen Armour Davis, who actually exited the game. We're going to talk about injuries here in a second because I know a lot of people are curious about that. Brian Branch, he's a sophomore. DeMarco Hellams, a junior. Jordan Battle, a junior. Christian Harris, a junior. Henry Toto, a junior. William Anderson, a sophomore. Dallas Turner, a freshman. Byron Young, a junior. Phil Mathis, a senior. And DJ Dell, a junior. So you look at all those juniors and sophomores, even a couple of freshmen sprinkled in there. The defense is going to be even monstrous coming back for this 2022 season. And we got our first super chat, which we appreciate.
Matthew, roll Tide, my friend. We appreciate you. Thank you for the super chat, man. That is a great one right there, man. I appreciate it. Kyle appreciates it. A great way to start this Sunday night in 2022 with a $50 super chat, man. Roll Tide.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you so much. And just as I talked about at the beginning of the show, you know, we don't have to really have New Year's resolutions if we're already continuing on the correct business path. And if you guys like the product that you guys are seeing, hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe. We appreciate you more than you know. We'll leave that up for a minute, Matthew. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, let's switch gears a little bit, Kyle, and talk about the NFL. And it's not what a lot of you guys probably think. That's because this time of year, normally we're looking at the roster and we're going, hey, we're going to lose a bunch of guys to the NFL. We're going to talk about the youth of the team. You already kind of dipped into it a little bit. But how about Bill O'Brien interviewing for Jacksonville? Is there a chance that he leaves?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if he's going to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I think as soon as Bill O'Brien was coming to Alabama, we all knew that this was going to be short-lived. Now, look, Bill O'Brien could do something crazy and end up staying. I think there's a low likelihood of that because Bill O'Brien is an NFL coach. He wants to be in the NFL, and I think a lot of these NFL coaches that come to college, there's a recruiting aspect that I don't think a lot of them like to deal with. Now, I have no idea if Bill O'Brien likes to recruit, but there's a difference between recruiting 17 and 18-year-old men between, you know, and dealing with kind of the business aspect of the NFL. I would say that recruiting along with coaching under Nick Saban is a very daunting task. Now, Bill O'Brien, in my opinion, has did a good job. I mean, think about it. A first-year offensive coordinator taking this offense who had a new quarterback, who had a new running back, new weapons on the outside. And look, Alabama's here in the national championship against Georgia. So is he going to go to Jacksonville? I don't know. I mean, it seems like it'd be a good fit. And I have a buddy who's a Jacksonville Jaguar fan. And you look at the Jaguars and all the pieces that they have, man, they have talent. That's an understatement probably. And they're going to have probably the first or second pick again to build around Trevor Lawrence. So I think Bill O'Brien, if the job does become available for him, and if he does interview well, then that's a job that he has to take. And I think he'll do well. I think Bill O'Brien is a really good coach, and I think he is a good head coach, probably in the future. Now, a lot of Houston, Texas fans are going to say that when he became the GM and the head coach that he didn't do a good job or whatever. But if you ask Nick Saban didn't bring Bill O'Brien to Tuscaloosa if he thought it was just average. Nick Saban likes to be around guys who compete at the highest level. And Bill O'Brien, here he is now helping take Alabama to the Natty.
Guys, as you hang out with us on Sunday night, know that the phone lines are going to be open here shortly. You can call, though, and get in line to talk at 205-850-0883. He's Kyle Henderson, and I'm Mick Gillispie, and we are pumped about this championship game, Alabama and Georgia, round 2. Now, the question is, Kyle, and, anytime you go into a big game like this, you have to look at the injuries. Give us the latest on Alabama's health status going into the championship game.
Well, let me add real quick. I'm going to add to my screen, because I have on Bama Insider, I have actually an injury report where I kind of go over everything. And I have can you guys see that on the screen right now? There you go. Okay, let me zoom it in a little bit. I have a note on Malachi Moore. I want to talk about him a little bit more in depth because people keep asking about Malachi Moore. So I want to kind of give you an update, at least from what we know on Malachi Moore. So let's kind of start at the top right here. Out for the playoffs, John Mechie, knee injury, Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams, Kamar Wheaton. What do all those guys have in common? They're all running backs. Chris Allen looks like he was getting a little bit of footwork drills in before Cincinnati, but he clearly didn't play. Nick Saban said he had surgery recently, so we still list him as out for the playoffs along with Josh Jobe, Alabama's corner. Now, as you look to the Cotton Bowl, Alabama had Kool-Aid, DeQuincy McKinstry, and then they also had Kyrie Jackson in that corner as Jalen Armour Davis exited out. Still didn't look 100%. So you look at Alabama's defense holding Cincinnati's 6 points with some guys who are younger, some guys who don't have a lot of experience. I know Kool-Aid has played a lot, but Kyrie Jackson, that was really the first time that we saw him in a big-time game. After the Cotton Bowl, there was a lot of dust. There was a lot of people who kind of exited out. So let me update you guys real quick. Jalen Armour Davis, questionable for this next game, still dealing with that hip. We don't have a further update at this point. We'll hear from Nick Saban hopefully this week and get an update on Armour Davis, if there is any. Emil Ekiyor looks like he had a separated shoulder that was put back in place. Saban said that he does have a chance to come back to play. Jordan Battle looked like some sort of ankle, foot. He's fine. He clearly came back into the game. Chris Owens, he went out with an injury, but he should be fine for the national title game. I know there's a lot of people who have different opinions about Chris Owens, but fact of the matter is he will be back for that national title game. Still tracking updates on Darian Dalcourt, but Seth McLaughlin did a great job. He's been doing a fantastic job at center. And Robbie Oots out with the foot as well. Still kind of trying to figure out if those players are going to be healthy for the title game. Real quick, a couple other notes. Players entering the NCAA transfer portal or have entered or even made their decision: Jackson Bratton, Pierce Quick, Xavier Williams, Marcus Banks, and then players that are coming to Alabama for the 2022 season, Jamar Gibbs from Georgia Tech, big-time running back, and then you have Elias Ricks, big-time corner coming out from LSU. And those guys will be able to play for the Crimson Tide this next season.
Of those injuries or questionable players, who do you feel like is the toughest for Alabama to deal with not having?
Out of the guys out for the playoffs?
Yes.
Oh, I mean, John Mechie, 1,000,000%. I mean, Alabama not having John Mechie is scary, right? I mean, I think you can totally see a different game plan against Cincinnati. Now, we knew that Alabama was going to be ground heavy, but I think that anytime you have a player, with the experience that John Mechie has, other guys are going to step out. And we did see that from Ja'Cory Brooks. We've seen a continued progress. He's really playing at an elite level in Jamison Williams, but the next leading receiver, I think, was Slade Bolden this last game. So I'm curious to see the continued progress of these wide receivers. And we know which wide receiver is going to play. It's not like we keep on trying to figure out which receivers are going to step up. These are the receivers that you have. You have Jamison Williams. You have Slade Bolden. You have Ja'Cory Brooks. And then after that, it looks like you have Javon Baker. And a lot of people continue to ask about Ajay Hall. I know, there's some people who like to, say that he's going to get a lot of playing time. He's going to get his playing time when Nick Saban puts him in the game. I know he got a couple snaps, but the guys, there's a lot of guys ahead of him. And, my biggest question, too, going forward is whether John Mechie will come back for the 2022 season. I mean, What do you think about that, Mick? I mean, I don't think he's a first-round guy. And I think of the big thing on Mechie and is his speed. He doesn't have elite speed. He's even talked about the fact that he's not as fast as Waddle, who is, but he doesn't have elite speed. But I mean, Mechie certainly is a baller. So I'm kind of tracking to see if he's one of those guys that does return for 2022.
Yeah, good question. I never even thought about that. When you don't have the elite speed, you want to have great hands, and at times he does, but he's also had some drops. His status could go way up if he comes back and really concentrates on just, being that guy like Smitty was last year that just caught everything.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, Devontae Smith, he was one of those guys that come back for his senior year. And I think it would probably be better suited for John Mechie to come back. But look, the decision is going to be made with Mechie and Coach Saban. So what happens, and this is very important, right after Alabama and Georgia play, immediately after, guys who are eligible to go to the NFL, they will meet with Nick Saban immediately following the game. So the game's over, they celebrate. Those guys have a meeting with Nick Saban, and Nick Saban gives them their draft grade. And these are from NFL scouts. And Nick Saban is always talking about not leaving money on the table. So let's say that John Mechie is a second-round guy. I think you certainly have to take it. If he's a third or fourth round guy, I think that Mechie has to come back. So Nick Saban meets with all those guys before agents start talking to them. And, so know that after the game, those players will receive draft grades, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Something else that you touched on, and I want you to elaborate more on, is Malachi Moore. Haven't seen as much Malachi Moore as we've seen some of the other guys like Brian Branch.
Well, first of all, I don't think it's an injury that Malachi Moore has. So, for example, Malachi Moore did play in this last game. He was listed, did see reps. Now, we're not going to see him, start over Brian Branch, who was playing through the roof. And I think a lot has to do with Brian Branch might have passed him. Remember when Malachi Moore went down with the injury, Brian Branch stepped up. Brian Branch, as you said on your post-game call-in show, he was everywhere, right? It was like William Anderson and then Brian Branch. In fact, Brian Branch led the team in tackles against Cincinnati. So Malachi Moore, I don't think he's injured. I think that Brian Branch is just playing over him. And, not to say that Malachi Moore, is bad or is not going to play in the future, because we all saw what he's capable of. We do know what Malachi Moore is capable of. It's just, this is Bama. The best have to play. And to think about, Brian Branch and Malachi Moore competing for that star position, because who are they going to start over in the secondary? I mean, Jordan Battle, DeMarco Helms, Daniel Wright, all those guys have the safety spot locked up. And then the corner spots, those guys aren't necessarily corners, even though Brian Branch could probably play corner. But right now, I think you'll see Malachi Moore in the future. But as for right now, I think Brian Branch is getting the reps because he's playing at a little higher of a level. And I think that he's one of the best players on defense right now.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's well said. I mean, when you talk about the way that Brian Branch played last game, how can you take him out? It was like there were 3 or 4 of them out there. I mean, it was like he was tackling guys in the secondary. He's pressuring the quarterback. He's knocking down passes. He's tripping guys up. Kyle, something else that you kind of mentioned earlier in the show that I want to go back to is Bama's youth. I mean, you kind of just went through the defense. The best players on this team are sophomores, which is still, to me, crazy, but they're starting to really come into their own.
Yeah, you look at, kind of the youth of this team overall. I mean, we talked about the defense. Let's kind of run through the offense real quick. Well, the Heisman, he's a sophomore. I mean, now you kind of look to the page, like he's played his whole sophomore year. Is he really a sophomore anymore? I mean, yeah, roster-wise, but I mean, overall, he's probably more like a junior. So you got Bryce Young. Brian Robinson is a senior on this group. So is Chris Owens. But other than that, most of these guys, have the opportunity to come back. Jamison Williams is a junior. Now he's a projected first-round guy. Ja'Cory Brooks got another big touchdown pass for Alabama against Cincinnati. He's a freshman. Slade Bolden, just a junior. Cam Latu, he's a junior. Emil Ekiyor, he's a junior. Seth McLaughlin, who started at center for Alabama, he's a sophomore. Javion Cohen, who started right next to him at guard, he's a sophomore. And Evan Neal, he's a junior, but we all know that Evan Neal is a top 5 pick. You look at other, contributors on this team. This team is very young. There's a lot of guys who are juniors who are playing, but I don't think there's a lot of juniors on this team that are going to go to the NFL. The one guy that I kind of question is John Mechie, as I said earlier, but most of those other juniors are going to come back. So I think when you look at this team overall, they're a young team, and I kind of labeled them as sophomoric at the beginning of the season, and it's been amazing to see their transformation. I think this is one of Saban's best coaching jobs overall in terms of helping these guys find their identity, and I think it did take them a little bit longer to build that cohesiveness, but look at their leaders. One is a sophomore on defense, William Anderson, and one is a sophomore on offense, and Bryce Young. So it took those guys time to kind of, develop that cohesiveness with the rest of the unit. But now these guys are playing at a high level. Yes, it's going to be a tall task to beat Georgia once again. Georgia is an incredible team. The way that they took it to Michigan, I wasn't really surprised by that. Those guys probably a little bit more refocused after Alabama took it to them. They have a tall task taking on Georgia, but I think this team has much more veteran experience than their roster kind of indicates with, sophomores and juniors, so to speak.
Alabama and Georgia will play on Monday night, and we will preview this thing right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Guys, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the thumbs up, share with your friends. Let them know that we're going to be on here talking about Alabama. He's Kyle Henderson, and I'm Mick Gillispie. Tonight, we'll take some calls after we kind of break things down a little bit for you. And, here we go, Kyle. Moving forward, areas of concern going into this game. And I put a picture of Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher up there just because that's who Alabama lost to this year, former assistant. Obviously, this time around, it's another game against Kirby Smart.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest areas of concern going against Georgia is the fact that you don't have John Mechie. So I think, in terms of the play calling, what is Bill O'Brien going to come up with to be creative to, continue to get the football out quick? I don't think you can do exactly what you did the last time they played, because Georgia is going to have, they're going to be more prepared. They're going to understand what it took to play Bryce Young. Now, can Alabama run the football on Georgia? That's something that a lot of teams haven't been able to do all season. But the way that Brian Robinson ran, my goodness, that was one of the best performances that we've seen from an Alabama running back in quite some time. And, you have Najee, all these guys. I mean, that was kind of the game that we'd been waiting for Brian Robinson. The areas of concern, I think someone mentioned it in the comment box, is how is Alabama going to stop Brock Bowers, that tight end? Because even against Alabama in the SEC title game, my goodness, if you're an Alabama fan, don't you wish that Brock Bowers was playing for Alabama? That guy is so dynamic, and he makes a lot of good plays, and especially, their backfield. So can Alabama's defense once again rise up to stop Zamir White, Brooks, Brock Bowers? And I think that, if Alabama does have to deal with the pressure, are they going to be able to deal with it in a positive way? Is Bryce Young going to avoid mistakes? That's something that he's been very good at this season. I mean, you look at his touchdown to interception ratio. He's done a fantastic job all season long. So Bill O'Brien's really going to have to come up with a great game plan to have these guys ready to go. Bryce took it to them last time. Georgia's ready. Georgia's hungry, but we'll have to see what happens. But there's a lot of areas of concern when you look to this game.
Yeah, I read today that Brock Bowers has been dealing with a little bit of a shoulder issue for Georgia. So keep an eye on that as well. They've got their own injuries going into this game. But I agree. I mean, he's one of the most, for a freshman too, on top of it, he's one of the most complete tight ends in college football right now.
Yeah, he's a baller, and they get the football to him. Stetson Bennett has had issues going up against Alabama. Each of these last two times, you look to last season, and I'm not talking 2021, I'm talking the year before, when Stetson Bennett and Georgia came to Alabama. He had a tough time going up against Alabama's defense. And then in the SEC title, I mean, Jordan Battle really could have had 2 pick sixes. So can Georgia throw the football in Alabama? I don't think they can. But then again, we just talked about Alabama not having Job, potentially not having Jalen Armour Davis. So you kind of look to that aspect. Now, Stetson Bennett is a very good quarterback. He's been better, than what Georgia's had in the past, but he has struggled with Alabama, and I think Alabama's defense is playing at a very high level. So I know that the odds came out, and I know that Georgia's favored by 3. What were they favored by last time? Like 11 or something like that?
No, it was 7. I thought it should be closer to 14. I mean, just the way that both teams were playing going in. And this time they're still favorite. They started at 2.5. So if it's gone up to 3, and it has in some places, it tells you that people feel like Georgia's going to be able to figure it out this time around.
And they might be able to. Look, the whole thing about Saban going up against assistants, like, I don't really look too much into that. I just, it's the next game. Everything's different from last game to this game. So you can't say that, just because Alabama beat Georgia, it's going to be the same thing. I mean, things change, roster management changes, the playbook changes a little bit. But the thing that hasn't really changed for Alabama has been the play of Bryce Young. Now, I know he didn't have his best game against Cincinnati, but he avoided mistakes. He did what he was supposed to do. And I mean, my goodness, the season that he's put up, now he's the career passing yards leader. I'm sorry, for a single season, and touchdowns as well. I mean, surpassing Tua Tagovailoa. The guy is, he's just big time. He's smooth. He's great under pressure. And Jamison Williams and Slade Bolden and Ja'Cory Brooks or whoever it is, those guys are going to have to come up big again. And then, paging Brian Robinson. I mean, if Brian Robinson is fully healthy, which he wasn't fully healthy the last time he played Georgia. Remember, that was one of the most gritty performances.
Yeah.
He went in with a hamstring injury. And did you know this, that Alabama's strength and conditioning staff, they created him a fake hamstring? Have you heard of this?
No.
So check this out. So all these amazing things that Jeff Allen and the staff does. So what they're able to do right now is they're able to create this apparatus that goes on the back of the hamstring, and then it goes down to just underneath your calf muscle. And basically, as you run, it acts like a fake hamstring. And that's what he played with against Georgia.
Really?
Yeah. I would like to learn more about that kind of in
Jeez.
the off season. I didn't even know there was technology to do that. But clearly, his hamstring is healed because he was a beast on Friday night. My goodness, what a performance!
Yeah, it really was, and I just keep on giving the offensive line a bunch of credit too, because they created the lanes and he trucked through those lanes en route to an Alabama beatdown of Cincinnati that kept begging to play Alabama. I don't know that Georgia's begging to play Alabama this time around, Kyle. Going into this game, I look at it and I guess I'm kind of on – I don't know. I mean, I don't know where you are on this. I'm pretty confident in Alabama because I feel like this is a conflicting style. Alabama has changed the way that they play offense to combat the way that teams would attack them playing offense, right? Playing defense. So basically – Alabama went into that game against Clemson. They won in 2015, but they see this style and they're going, hey, look, for us to keep up, we're going to have to change things. And then when I saw Alabama play Georgia, and it was absolutely a shocker to me, but what it came down to is style. Alabama has a style that is built to take on those kind of defenses. So the injuries definitely hurt. But, I mean, if you're Alabama, you've got to be really confident in the way that you played the last two games against two teams that hadn't lost.
Yeah, great point. But I think it all comes down to, like you said, I mean, Nick Saban being able to evolve with the game. And that's why I continue to tell you, and there's a lot of people out there that get crazy when I say this, and I know what Mick's going to say is like, what he's thinking, but someone told me that Saban's like just warming up with all these national titles. I know it's crazy to think like that, but I mean, when he evolved, you completely saw Alabama even spring more forward than the rest of college football. It's not that 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and they took it to Georgia. And I think until Georgia moves to that style, it could potentially, they could have trouble having this type of success that Alabama's having because they just don't have that type of tempo. Kirby Smart and staff, I mean, you look at all their running backs and they're kind of that 3 yards in a cloud of dust with the big time defense, but Alabama has that high potent offense and now their defense really coming along. So cannot wait for this national title game. Georgia is such a great team. Kirby Smart's done a tremendous job with this group and everything that Alabama it has been thrown at Alabama this year. I mean, they faced a lot of adversity. They faced a lot of injuries. They had to, replace all their arsenal for this coming season. And here they are again, entering 2022, vying for another national championship.
All right, Kyle, we got some calls lined up. Anything else that you want to add that I didn't hit before we bid you farewell and start taking some calls? Or you can stick around and take the calls if you want to. Either way.
Yeah, you guys call in. I just, I want to wish you guys a happy new year. You guys definitely call into the show. Thank you very much for supporting us here at Bama Insider. Please subscribe if you're new to the channel. Hit the thumbs up. It goes a long way. We appreciate all the super chats. You guys call into Mick. I'll be with you guys the rest of this week talking Alabama football right here on our YouTube channel.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it, man. Nice work tonight. Happy New Year. All right, guys, look, let's take some calls. Like and subscribe, as Kyle mentioned. Give us the thumbs up as you hang out tonight. We're going to talk about this Alabama game, and I love it. I love it when I look in the call log and you guys are ready to go and you're itching to get in here and talk about things from if I say Saturday, I mean last game, which is really Friday. But anyway, let's go to the phone lines and talk some Alabama football. Who's this and where you calling from?
Hey, Mick, this is Jim Gallagher out of Dallas, Texas. How you doing, son?
Good. How's it going?
Doing well. Got to say I wasn't really surprised that Alabama was able to run the ball on Cincinnati because they've given up quite a few running yards coming into the game. So it was kind of obvious that's where we would attack them, and it did work better than I thought it would. And B-Rob, of course, had a great game. So it was just more or less kind of like an old school football game. We line up and play some smash mouth football, and our boys are going to whip your boys. and we're going to win most of those battles. Something that I noticed, and I hadn't heard many people mention anything about, was the Cincinnati and Michigan combined for a total of one late garbage touchdown, one between them, and a total of 17 points against Alabama and Georgia's defense. That was, if you just look at those numbers are really kind of shocking. That's all the points that they were able to muster against two really good SEC teams. And a lot of people are talking about, well, the SEC is down, they're weak, and this year, and they're not the best conference. But I tend to disagree with that, because they're using what I call a fake comparison. You take Houston, for example. They're trying to compare Houston with their win over Auburn as being an indicator of SEC being down. I would point out that Houston finished second, I believe, in the AAC, and Auburn, I think, finished 8th in the SEC, and they were without their quarterback.
No, they were without a bunch of people.
That's not a fair.
Well, they had a bunch of guys opt out.
That's right, and that's not a fair comparison. If you want to compare conferences, you would have to compare our first place team against theirs, and on down the line, third team, fourth team, what have you. But I think in the case of Cincinnati, they were kind of like the dog that finally caught the pickup truck and then didn't know what to do with it when they caught it.
Look, I and you probably watched, I had said from the beginning when that matchup was made that it was going to look just like Ole Miss, where basically Alabama was going to run straight ahead right over them. And they don't have the size. They don't have the size to stop Alabama. Brian Robinson had a great game, but I'll tell you what, the offensive line had a better game. They made those running lanes for him. They balled over Cincinnati on the run blocking, and it was a beautiful thing. And that's exactly what happened to the Rebels when they played Alabama. And those two teams are so much alike, and they got beat about the same way, except Alabama's defense is a lot better now than they were at the beginning of the season. They've just continued to improve. And you said something that did not surprise me at all, is going into the game, we stretched this thing out where we want 4 teams in, and now they're going to eventually want 12 teams into a playoff, and how many more. There were 2 good teams this year from the very beginning. It was Georgia and it was Alabama, and that was it. And the rest of, Michigan, watching them try to throw the football against Michigan State, I'm going, there's no way they're going to beat Georgia. There's no way, because you're not beating them unless you spread them out and throw the football and you play fast. So I wasn't surprised about either game, really, the way that it turned out. But the SEC by far is the best college football conference. I mean, I don't even think it's close. When you see Oklahoma and Texas jumping ship to become part of it, that just gives you an idea of how dominant this conference is.
Well, Michigan just didn't have the team speed to compete with Georgia, and they wouldn't have had with Alabama either. That was the main thing. They just didn't have the team speed. And our defense has improved so much. The defensive line and linebackers are actually beginning to look like some of our old-time teams, where they really protected the secondary, which had injuries and were not that good to start with. They were inexperienced and pretty young players back there. And they get to the quarterback and put pressure on him so fast that they're protecting our defensive secondary. Yeah. I think that's what's going to happen with Stetson Bennett too.
Well, I mean, it happened the last 2 times we saw Stetson Bennett. And I think Georgia's I got a feeling that if things don't start off well for Georgia, they may try to roll the dice and try to take advantage of Alabama's youth, which earlier this season worked with some of the fake kicks and other stuff that teams did. But this is a different Alabama team right now. I don't think they're going to fall for it. And I think that if Georgia rolls the dice and tries to pull out a bunch of trick plays early, they could turn it into a championship game that looked a lot like last year's Alabama-Ohio State game. I think you got to play it close to the vest against Alabama if you're Georgia, and hope that you can get it into a four-quarter game, and that Alabama's offense doesn't pull away where you can't catch back up. Because you guys know this too. I've said this a million times. Since Kirby Smart left and went to Georgia, he took Alabama with him, right? But it's not the Alabama that we have now. It's like the Brad Paisley song, Old Alabama. It's the old Alabama, right? Except I'm not talking about the group from Fort Payne. I'm talking about that we're going to run the ball and control the clock, and we're going to have a game manager, Greg McElroy type guy at quarterback, and we're going to win that way. The problem is that the way that football is policed now, the way that they call the games, you can't win like that. You have to score to be able to beat these teams because they score. And I just look at Georgia, and if they fall behind, they're like a turtle on their back. They just can't get back into the game.
Well, that's exactly what happened to Georgia the first time we played them. I knew if we could get them into a scoring contest with us, if we could ever get out 10 points or 14 points on them and force them to play catch-up, there's no way their offense can keep up with ours as far as scoring points. And that's exactly what happened to them in the last time we played them.
Yeah.
Their offense just isn't capable of doing that. If it's a grind them out, hard-nosed football, toe-to-toe, yeah, probably Georgia can compete very well. But if you get them in a slugfest and a scoring contest, there is no way that that Georgia offense can keep up with us.
No chance at all. Well, anything else, Jim, before we go to the next call? And I appreciate you getting on the phone today. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in, and roll Tide, man.
Roll Tide.
Great call, Jim in Dallas. Let's go right back to the phone lines again and keep this thing going. Who's this and where you calling from?
Hey, Mick. This is Michael from Rogersville.
What's up, Michael?
Hey, just wanted to say Happy New Year to you, and thanks for the work you do here on the Bama Insider Show, getting everybody who's passionate about the Crimson Tide together. So, again, just best wishes in this new year, and thanks again for the work you do. I wanted to hit on a couple topics with you. First being, I'm trying to measure my expectations. The Auburn game, while it was, 6 weeks ago now, it was not that many games ago that we had a performance where what did we turn out? 10 total points?
Yes.
Versus the Tigers. And I only bring that up because I remember watching the post-game show that night with you, and how elated and, surprised maybe would be a good word to say it. We were at the offense's ability to put up 41 points. And I don't know that I'm willing to throw away the number of games we had where the offense seemed to really not click like we would expect them to in exchange for the Georgia game. And I think we can all sit here and say the Cincinnati game. I mean, frankly, the Cincinnati game was an anomaly. And when was the last time we ran this year for 200 yards with a single running back?
Yeah, it was Ole Miss.
That's just not how we're
right. Except
we're not winning football games doing that. And I don't expect that that's going to be our template for Georgia. But I guess what I'm speaking to, and feel free to insert kind of on any of these topics. Bill O'Brien, I know Bryce Young has really developed what seems to be a good relationship with him, but I am still hesitant that we could find ourselves halfway through the second quarter against Georgia with Bill O'Brien dropping Bryce Young back, there being a 5-6 man rush. And, Georgia's got a talented defense. I don't expect many offensive lines to be able to give their quarterback 5 seconds against a 6 man rush. But so many times I feel like I see Bill O'Brien calling these long developing, long unfolding passing schemes. And when we played Georgia the first time, it worked because we pass blocked very well. Jamison Williams got deep. And I think you saw Cincinnati say, no one's getting over the top, and we didn't, which is fine. But I guess what I'm trying to kind of think back through is, all right, we had this blowout win versus Georgia. Cincinnati was a tune-up game. I'm really interested to see, can Bill O'Brien do what Sarkisian, and before Sarkisian, I think it was Kiffin, correct me if I'm wrong, and can he be part of the X factor for our offense when we get through the first quarter and the gears are just not lubed up? Things are still just kind of not really firing. And again, you looked at the Georgia game, you'd say, hey, we have no questions to ask about our offense. But, it wasn't too long ago that we played Auburn and Cincinnati. I mean, heck, we could have just ran, all of our third string wide receivers and probably still been just fine against Cincinnati.
Right.
So kind of give me some back and forth there about what I've said and kind of what your takeaway is as you've been, covering the Tide all year. I'd be interested to get your 2 cents. But first and foremost, roll Tide.
Hey, roll Tide, Michael. Yeah, look, I'll say this. First off, Nick Saban is why I'm confident going into this game at this point. He has been a master technician this year running the program. Normally, Alabama doesn't play well and or they play great, and no matter how it happens, he goes on TV and he's upset. He's angry about something. He's talking about the 5 things that went wrong and not the things that went right. But this year, it was a different Nick Saban. He was patting guys on the back and staying positive and telling us to stay positive and telling us to appreciate the wins. And then all of a sudden, we got through Auburn, and maybe we shouldn't have, but we did. And going to the Georgia game, and everyone's just thinking we're going to lose. And what happened was, and I heard this from a great source, is that there was just a different energy in the program going into that Georgia game. Like everyone just thought, hey, we got through this. Now it's time to get locked in and let's win the title. And they went in and they won the title against Georgia. Nick Saban has a different type of confidence right now. I can tell that when he's talking that he realizes that he's got this team where he wants them, where he's been trying to get them all year long, all the struggles that they had. And look, it was not an easy year for these guys. They didn't dominate a lot of their opponents. And Nick Saban's the guy that said, sometimes you win the game, but you don't defeat your opponent. He said that after the Florida game. You had Florida was a tough game. And Auburn was a tough game. Could have lost both of those. Lost against Texas A&M, and then struggled against Arkansas. Couldn't put them away. LSU. I mean, how embarrassing was that performance, right? But all of a sudden, after that Auburn game, that drive at the end, it's like it all just has clicked. And I don't know what's going to happen in the championship game. Georgia has great players. I picked them to win the championship at the beginning of the season. But I feel differently about Alabama because of the way that Nick Saban, the body language, the confidence, I just feel it. I feel like he has gotten this team where he wants them. And Alabama might not win, but I'll tell you what, they're not going to go in there and I'm not going to say the term I want to use here. They're not going to go into this game and shoot themselves in the foot. They're going to play a good game. Georgia's going to have to play a better game to beat them. And I don't know if I could have said that at the beginning of the season. I definitely couldn't have in the middle of the year. And after the Auburn game, I thought they would get boat raced by Georgia, but something's happened there. And I just feel like Alabama's going to go in and execute the game plan, and that if Georgia is going to beat them for the title, Georgia's going to have to play an amazing game, comparable to, maybe what happened when Alabama beat Florida in the SEC championship game in 2009, where everything they played about a perfect game to beat a team that I still feel like is one of the greatest SEC teams ever, in that Florida team in 2009. And Alabama just went in there and played a perfect game and beat them. And we haven't really seen the Gators since.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points. Let me ask you one or two other points of information. We've all talked about Jaleel Billingsley, and he really seemed to have quite a presence last year. I believe he's listed on the depth chart as a tight end. Is that right?
Yeah.
When you look at him, he's not nearly the size of a player as Cameron Latu. Did he play much kind of lined up next to the tackle last year, or was he always listed as a tight end but was technically, never with his hand down in the dirt? Do you remember kind of in what way he was used last year? And then was it strictly his off the field demeanor issues that kind of turned Saban off of him getting playing time, or what's your understanding of that?
Look, I think last year was for him was a better example of the player that he can be, right? Because he can block some and he can catch a lot. And it's like when he's out there, I mean, look, he's not a blocking tight end, but he can do it. But
Right.
he was a force. And from what I understand, it really comes down to doing everything in the program the way that you're supposed to do it. And it's not just football. Although I had a former Alabama player, one of the guys who played for Saban, and I don't want to mention their name, but told me in a private conversation that when he watched the games at the beginning of the season, he wanted to grab Billingsley by his collar and basically, motivate him to do things the Alabama way on the field. He's like, watch his body language, watch the way that he's not blocking, watch the way that he runs routes when the ball's not coming to him, things that I don't really know because I didn't play football at Alabama. I've been around the program a long time, but I've been in the locker room for Nick Saban, been through practice. I don't have a championship ring, so when someone that has done those things tells me that, then obviously that's what Nick Saban's seeing, and so Billingsley has the potential to be a game changer. It was good to see him get back involved in the game the last few times, including some big catches against Cincinnati. And Alabama's going to need him without John Mechie. So when I'm watching him, I haven't picked up personally on any of that negative stuff. I see a guy who, when he catches the ball, is a load to bring down, that you better keep an eye on him. But yeah, I mean, at Alabama's program, if you don't go to class, show up on time, get there early for your team meetings, if you don't play the way that you're supposed to play, if you don't follow all of the different rules, you don't play a lot of football for Nick Saban. That's just the way that he's done it. And honestly, he's kind of a dinosaur in that capacity, because the kids this day and age, they don't normally respond to that. But what he's been able to do, the way that he's been able to convince these guys to do their best, is obviously why he's the greatest coach of all time. But I think a lot of programs would have said, you know what, the guy doesn't like going to class. Let's get a tutor to help him get through his classes. And, if he doesn't want to go there, as long as he's making plays on Saturday, who cares? The problem with that is that when you start going down that road, it's like a cancer. Then this guy wants to do it that way, and then that guy, and then you lose your program. And Nick Saban has not allowed that to happen. And, thank God you got guys like Will Anderson and Bryce Young and, and all of these other players that have been there over the years. Brian Robinson's a great example of the process. And
they want to do it.
Yeah, they want to do it the right way. They lead by example. I don't know what goes on in the locker room, but I'll tell you what, when Nick Saban's talking about Will Anderson, he never starts with the kind of football player he is. He always starts with the kind of person he is, and that tells me a lot.
I think you made some great points, Mick. I'll leave it with this last point, then I'll hang up and let you carry on to the next caller. If Georgia decides to go back and watch film against teams that were successful against Bama this year, I think they'll find the LSU game, I think they'll find the Auburn game to be situations where there seemed to be a reproducible pattern of forcing Bryce Young to either get the ball out quick or get sacked or flushed. And if I'm Georgia, that's of course what I'm thinking is, all right, who had success against Bama, and how do we duplicate that? Now, if our offensive line and our tight ends and our running backs say, hey, you can bring 5 or 6 and we're going to block them, well, then we are going to be on easy street. However, if they bring 5 or 6 and the plays do break down early, what's Bill O'Brien going to do when he sees, or if this happens, the first 2 or 3, 4 drives don't unfold in a fluid, efficient, maintaining possession, eating the clock, moving the ball down the field? What do you think Bill O'Brien will do? That's still one thing I really have not been able to gain a lot of confidence in with Bill O'Brien, is when it's not working, what in-game adjustments does Bill O'Brien make? And I hope he doesn't have to, because I hope the offensive line is there. I hope the plays unfold on time as they should. The ball comes out quickly. That is one area I'm really looking at Bill O'Brien to kind of, Kiffin, when he was there, the offense had a bit of a Kiffin-esque fingerprint on it.
Right.
When Sarkisian was there was a sense that there was a talented offensive mind engineering the playbook. With O'Brien, I get the sense that he's got an incredible quarterback, but outside of that, I don't know that I would consider the way in which he's using the talent to be something that's exceptional in the same way that maybe Kiffin was exceptional, Sarkisian was exceptional, Kirby was exceptional as a defensive coordinator. Again, I'll hang up and let you speak to that. But thanks for giving me some time tonight, and Roll Tide.
Hey, Roll Tide, great call from Rogersville. Michael calling in, and please do that again because we love to hear from you. All right, let me get to a couple things first. Thank you, Danko, for the super chat. Man, I really, really appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you guys that send us super chats. It means a lot. It goes a long way. Even though it's a dry January for me, at least that's the game plan. Always love to put a little bit back for the future beer slush fund. Right now, I'm just kidding. Look, I'm in a studio with the Yingling sign behind me, but I love all of you guys and I really appreciate it. And you make this show so much fun to do. All right, before I go to the next call, let me say this. I think you brought up a really, really good point, Michael, and it's something that I've thought about a lot. I don't understand why Georgia didn't try to go at Alabama with a similar game plan as far as the blitzing and the overloading certain sides of the line, preferably the right side, and really trying to attack Alabama. I think they assumed that they would be able to get pressure on Bryce Young with their 4 who have been dominant all year. And Michigan found out that they're still dominant and they're still great players. And, Davis is one of the best players in the country in the middle, but there's a lot of other guys that are good too. And Alabama just came into the game at probably the same way they're going to do it this time, and they're just going to go fast. They're going to go fast. They're going to try to get the ball into the hand of their playmakers. They're going to roll the pocket. And I got to give Bill O'Brien some credit. No, he's not Lane Kiffin, and he's not Mike Locksley, and he's not a lot of these other guys, but he's an NFL guy. And the thing that he does is keep Alabama moving forward and not making mistakes. And with the way that the defense is playing right now, you just don't want to make a mistake and give the other team anything. The defense is locked in. And so in the Cincinnati game, I felt like there were times where Alabama could have taken some risks and pushed the ball. But with Brian Robinson running behind that offensive line that was bull rushing Cincinnati, why do it? So if you got to punt the ball, you got to give it up a little bit more than maybe if it was a different opponent and a different day, you would. And that's kind of an NFL style. It's not about trying to win and beat your opponent by 50. It's just trying to win and make the least amount of mistakes. So I got to give Bill O'Brien a lot of credit for that. And the fact that Alabama's back in the championship game, and this is one of the youngest teams Alabama's had under Nick Saban. So, look, I'm not saying he's going to stay. I don't know that there's, who's better at the job than him. I'm not a Bill O'Brien apologist, but I got to give the guy a lot of credit. The game plan against Georgia was magnificent, and the Cincinnati game plan was perfect. I thought it was perfect. I would have done it the exact same way. I don't care about the stats. You know what I saw? I saw Alabama go in there, punch those guys in the mouth, and just keep them down. And I thought that the tweet from Travis Kelce, who I've met before, I should show you. I got a picture. I hung out with him. I think he's a good guy. But him saying that, he wasn't that impressed with Alabama. Look, that'd be like the possum that I jogged by today that has been, dead on the side of the road for a week, saying that he wasn't impressed with the tire that hit him. Look, that's what happened to the Bearcat. They're on the side of the road right now, dead, and Alabama just rolled right over them, plain and simple. And the game plan I thought was really good. All right, let's go back to the phone lines. And again, as you guys hang out, please like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up as you hang out on a Sunday night and we talk Alabama football. Who's this and where are you calling from?
Kevin, Dallas, Georgia. How you doing this evening, man?
Kevin, what is up, dude?
Well, I'm back in purgatory, Mick, but I digress, man. I'm just glad I had opportunity to, as far as get my mental health together, as far as back in God's country, Mobile, Alabama, and hey, like I said, I'm back in purgatory, and have the opportunity to listen to the unmitigated gall of Georgia fans that are, I'm gonna try to use it just in code, PO, Mick, because they're only a 2.5, 3-point favorite. Do you want to go on and give them a 10-point favorite, Mick? Would that do anything better for their self-esteem, that they'll feel better being a 10-point favorite than lose, and we can go on and get them rooms booked at South Hospital? I mean, because, my goodness. But more important things, Mick, as far as a week from Monday is concerned, it's, as always, you're playing against yourself. Alabama fans, the University of Alabama is playing against the University of Alabama. Coming into the season, everyone expected the University of Alabama to have a successful season. Now, as far as if you had to break it down by percentage-wise, as far as how many of them felt that they were going to be in the position in which they're in right now, I don't know. But I'm going to be honest with you, Mick, I expected that. But when it comes to the talent on this team, even Stevie Wonder can tell you the most talented players on this team this year are the underclassmen. And that's the reason why I kind of have to push back with you and Kyle in reference to, if I could be Nostradamus for a moment, looking into a week from Tuesday, in the respect of the only guys that I would give a marker as far as coming back for the 22-23 season, honestly, Mick, would be two guys. And that would be Jalen Moody and Chris Allen. And the only reason why I put give them the opportunity would be a matter because of injury. But as far as how I feel about the upperclassmen on this year's team,
Mm-hmm.
it is time to turn the page, Mick. It is time to allow the freshmen and sophomores to shine. And in order for them to shine, they can't shine with the upperclassmen there, because Mick is not Mick, but as far as Coach Saban is loyal to a fault, Mick.
Mm-hmm.
And by that being the case, we can't have the upperclassmen there for another year. Metch is ready for the league. He will clear as far as his medicals in another couple of months. That being the case, he can, pursue as far as his professional pursuits, because the talent is there, Mick. The talent is there. Allow the freshmen and sophomores to pick up the flag, pick up the stick, whatever, as far as physical tools be picked up as far as for the next couple of years, Mick, and allow them to shine, because really the thing was with this freshman and sophomore class, it was supposed to be the upper class. They were supposed to, with the freshmen and sophomores, to be able to acquire 2 rings out of those next to 3 to 4 years. But as far as now, it's house money. So as far as Monday night is concerned, Alabama, be Alabama. You have the best coach. You have the best quarterback. You have the most feared guy in college football, and should be a top 4 pick if he was eligible this year, as in Mr. William Anderson Jr. And that being the case, just come and play ball. I don't give Mick, if they won 2-0 simply with a William Anderson Jr. safety, it doesn't matter. Get the W. 20 years from now, when we're sitting over at the retirement facility over there in doggone Fairhope, hey, only thing we remember about 21-22, it's simply that they won the title. That's it. And that's all that matters, gentlemen. We're not concerned about style points anymore. We're only concerned with one thing, and that's to win. That's it.
Yeah. Look, I well said. I mean, and that's why when and we've criticized Bill O'Brien this year, but at this point, I don't care how they do it. Like I saw where some people were upset that we didn't throw the ball enough against Cincinnati. Look, it was like being in a bowling alley, and once the ball was rolling, which was Brian Robinson, they couldn't do anything to stop it. I mean, why would you throw the ball? They got the two best cornerbacks in college football, arguably, with Kobe Bryant, who won the Thorpe, and Sauce Gardner, who is projected to be the second pick and maybe could be the first corner picked in the NFL draft. I mean, wouldn't that be something, right? So why would you run the ball? I mean, throw the ball why would you even want to mess with that when you don't have to? Game plan is like you said, if you win by 2, you just won by 2. You win the next game, and guess what? That helmet sticker's got to change again to 19.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about. And the one thing I have to in parting state this, Mick, and that is Alabama fans. We respect all, but fear none. I wouldn't give a doggone Mick if we were playing the Cowboys, the doggone Ravens, Ray Lewis, etc. They have to compete, and that's the thing. But the one thing I will say, Mick, that is odd, that has not occurred as far as in this quote playoff era, is the University of Alabama having to travel somewhere out of the quote South. I mean, I thought it was a culture shock as far as traveling to the West Coast, but as far as Texas, not an issue. Louisiana, not an issue. Atlanta, definitely not an issue. Miami, But as far as going to Indianapolis, this is, I just look at it as in if we could just go forward from Monday, as far as a week from Monday, and who's going to be there, Mick? I mean, it's going to be you and I, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because when Alabama go in, they're going to boo, and when Georgia come in, the only thing they're going to do is look.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to even boo as far as Georgia. They're going to look like, who are these guys? And these guys are, the best two college football teams this year.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to worry about anyone getting in trouble in Indianapolis.
Indeed.
I mean, if what a sleeper.
I also have to interject this, Mick, and that is in reference to, as far as Monday night is concerned, the team that has the most to lose is the University of Georgia, and in two respects. Number one is in regards to the number of seniors that Smart talked out of leaving last year to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the quarterback room. Because the one thing that Kirby will not do, I have to give him respect, the one thing that Coach Smart refuses to do, Mick, is change. And until he changes, if they don't win a week from Monday, and they go with, as we all know, the greatest DUI lawyer in the state of Georgia, and that's Bennett IV. If they refuse to change once they get in trouble as far as Monday night, Mick, that quarterback room is going to move some furniture. And what do I mean by that? When you look at that quarterback room, Mick, you have the lowest star that you have in that quarterback room behind Bennett IV is a 4-star.
Mm-hmm.
Beck is 5-star. Daniels 5-star. Vandegrift is a 5-star. Then doggone Gunnar Stockton coming in as a 5-star.
Right.
And if you don't think that they look back and say, well, God dog, if Smart didn't play Daniels, Vandegrift, and Beck, then how in the blankety blank is he going to play me?
Yeah, right. How do you not get Justin Fields on the field?
From what I understand, Mick, it's a matter that Fromm was supposed to have been from his hometown, so he wanted to give him the old college try.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to give him the hometown discount. And what did that cost him? A national championship. That's
right. I mean, watching that performance that Justin Fields had against Clemson last year, that was one of the best in the playoff era. And I just kept thinking, with Georgia's defense and the way they can run the ball, if they had a dynamic QB like that guy, they did. But they had him holding punts. they had him holding punts or kicks.
And the craziest thing is, Mick, the
faking
barbershop talk here was a matter that the reason why they did not play him was that his limited grasp of the playbook.
Oh, yeah. Didn't they say that about Tua?
Oh, yes. And as we all know, that 226 is not February the 26th in the great state of Alabama. 226 is a national championship.
That's right.
Well, as always, thank you, Mick, for indulging me. Greatly appreciate it. It's always good always a blessing as far as to speak with you. Take care, and hey, look forward to talking with you. And as always, roll tide, roll.
Roll tide, roll, Kevin. From Georgia, right across the bay from me today, but from Dallas, Georgia, and one of our All-American callers. All right, let's go right back to the phone lines, guys, on a Sunday night. And please like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up as you hang out. 70,000 subscribers. I really can't even believe this, but you guys have made this channel. I mean, look, I signed on last year. It was like 30. Now it's 70. Kyle's calling for Bryant-Denny Stadium. So let's hope we get there maybe by the 8A game. Who knows? But you guys are awesome, and we appreciate you being here. Let's talk some more football. Who's this, and where are you calling from?
Hey, Mick, it's Mike from Kentucky. How you doing tonight, brother?
Hey, what's up, dude? How's it going?
Hey, man, if I was any better up Twins, we're going to the championship game, bro. That's what it's all about.
I'm surprised, but I'm ecstatic at the way that this team has just found that. Look, the Auburn game, and we talked about this before, but the way that the Auburn game ended was beautiful. You know, it was like watching a Rocky movie. You know, like I'm waiting on Rocky to beat Clubber Lang, and I didn't know if it was possible. You know, his trainer dies, and you know, now Mick's gone. You know, what's Rock going to do? And then, you know, here's Apollo, and then he trains him, and he's getting beat, and then all of a sudden he comes back and wins, and it's been just like an amazing ride since that moment.
Yeah, that Auburn game couldn't have played out any better, because I was about to pull my hair out about everybody saying Bryce Young hasn't had a Heisman moment yet, but he's been lighting people up like San Andreas forest fires all year long. You know, that kid, I don't care if Georgia wants to blitz him all night, fine. He sees the field better than any quarterback in the history of the game. I mean, if I'm wrong, tell me who sees the field better than that cat. He's actually better when you blitz. His completion, you know, percentage is better when he's being blitzed. And I totally agree with you, Mick. They took the absolute perfect approach to Cincinnati. You know, wasn't Cincinnati the number one ranked defensive backfield versus the pass in the country?
Yeah, look, they had two guys.
Throw a chunk of meat into a pool of sharks.
Yeah, right.
It don't make no sense.
No, you don't give them. Look, if you're trying to throw the ball without Mechie and those two guys at corner, you make a mistake and they get a pick six. It's a different game. You know, I described it at the house here. We were watching the game, and I said, "Look, it's like being devoured by an anaconda." You know, like right. It's not like if you get eaten by piranhas or lions. You know, where it's you know like a bunch of flesh flying around and all that. No, I mean basically you got strangled by the snake, and then he's going to detach his head and swallow you whole. I mean that's what happened to the Bearcats.
Yeah, I mean, if they breakups are just as bad as picks. You know, you don't play into the strength of another team's defense. They approach that game absolutely perfectly. But you know what? Just the audacity of Georgia fans to not realize the way we played that game was the correct way. They thought that they're actually saying we had an off night. Bryce Young had an off night. Bryce Young wasn't the feature presentation for the offense in that game. And I tell you what. We walked that dog once, we're going to walk that dog again, and that's all there is to it. You know, we could have hung 42, 48 points on Cincinnati. I'm not the least bit worried about Georgia. They keep eating that gravy train. Vegas is chomping on that gravy train. They're stuffing their face full of it too. You know, I think the spread on this game is set the way it is so they can get some Georgia money to bet on it. This is a sucker bet if I've ever seen one. As long as Bryce Young's standing on two good legs, we're gonna eat them up. We're gonna eat them up. What do you think, Mick?
Look, I think it's a style thing. Yeah, and I think that Georgia's style, they have an elite defense, but the way that college football is now, elite offense is going to beat elite defense because you can't play physical like you used to be able to. And it's just a different game now. And that's why we've transformed from having a program that looked exactly like Georgia to one that doesn't look like them anymore. It looks a lot different. There's dynamic playmakers all over the place, and we're going to go fast, and we're going to go no huddle, and we've got a quarterback. We don't have a game manager anymore. No offense to Greg McElroy, but he wouldn't even be the third string quarterback the way that things are going now at Alabama. But he might start at Georgia, But back when he was playing, I mean, that was kind of like a really good fit for Alabama, and he did a great job as Alabama's QB when that was the style that we ran. But it's not anymore. I mean, the last three guys that have started are in the NFL doing the same thing there. That's not how it used to be, I mean, we would have guys and I'd say, okay, well, this guy's a good quarterback, and he'd go to the NFL and be a backup, Alabama has turned into a program that features the best playmakers in the game, not just at linebacker and on defensive line and, some running backs. It's all over the offense. Georgia can definitely beat Alabama. I mean, look, they have the players and the talent to do it, but the style that they run, and to think that, look, Stetson Bennett has had his trouble against Alabama. If you think you're just going to throw JT Daniels in there and that's going to make a difference, you're going to find out that it's not going to make a difference. I just don't think so. Yeah, I know he has a better arm, but look, when they're being chased around in the pocket by Will Anderson and the rest of those guys on defense, that's when mistakes happen for Georgia.
By the time JT Daniels shakes the rust off, the game will be over. They might as well just stick with Stetson Bennett. And Georgia looked great when teams turned the ball over three times. A lot of people say, oh, Alabama struggled with Arkansas. Arkansas played their best game against us. Go back and watch the Arkansas-Georgia game. They couldn't even get the snap count right on that game. It was just two different completely. I don't even compare those teams. Compare those games. The Florida Gators turned the ball over two times inside their 25-yard line at the last 3 minutes of the second quarter. They didn't do that against us.
Right.
Georgia this year really created a misconception that they're a powerhouse team on both sides of the ball, and they're not. Their offense is better than average, and that's about it in my book. Now, their defense is pretty salty, but when you play fast, who's that big nose guard they got? What's his name?
Davis.
Yeah. He was out of gas with 9 minutes to go in the second quarter. He was done in the SEC championship game. So we're going to play fast. We're going to play hard. I'm going to get off because I know you got a lot of people wanting to chatter. Good talking to you, Mick. Roll dadgum Tide.
Hey, roll Tide, Mike. Thank you for calling in, and Happy New Year. Appreciate Always good to hear from you. Yeah, Happy New Year, man. Have a great one.
Happy New Year to you. Tell Kyle I said Happy New Year. I ain't talked to him all year.
I will. I'll pass that on. We do some of our meetings. We talk about you guys, and you're one of the guys that we've brought up before. And we can't. I mean, like, it's a big family, like Kyle's always said, and we appreciate all of you guys that have made this just so much fun to show up here and talk and kind of get into Alabama football. And the best part about it is, and it's a big compliment to you guys that are hanging out with us here, is just how intelligent you guys are about the game and how what's going on with the program. It really is amazing. I don't know that other shows have that, where guys are just calling in and bringing so much knowledge to the conversation, but you guys do. All right, let's go back to the phone lines again and talk some more Alabama. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe as you hang out. And again, thank you for being here. Who's this and where you calling from?
It's David Gaines. And I'm already calling from the Mecca, baby. Bruton, Alabama.
What's up, David?
What's going on, Mickey G? How you living?
Hey, man, good. Roll Tide, man. I'm still happy like I was last time we talked.
Hey, I understand. Trust me, I understand, man. Look, hey, it's been a roller coaster ride. It's been like an Oscar-winning movie. You know what I'm saying? You got the love story, you got the drama, you got everything in a mix, in a bowl. That's what our season's been this year.
It was like the Auburn game was like I just told him. It was like Rocky, you know, when it looked like Rocky was going to lose to Clubber Lang, but he just was able to get off the mat and land a couple of punches at the end of the fight, and both guys hit the mat, but Rocky got up at the end.
Right. And true fans, man, people who really love football understand, man. They understand what's going on, and they got a special respect for what's going on, especially about our team and the tenure that we've been running. And then this year, it's like icing on the cake. And I know everybody, when I call, they want to know why he keeps calling it the Mecca. Well, we love football here. We got one of what you call maybe the greatest rivalries in football from W.S. Neal and T.R. Miller right here in our own hometown. The first African-American quarterback for Alabama, Walter Lewis, is from here.
Really?
Mel Moore, Mel Moore, the athletic director, the one who actually brought Nick Saban in. I met him at a McDonald's right here in Bruton, Alabama. Kevin Sumlin, used to coach Houston, went to Texas A&M, had a quarterback named Johnny Manziel, who took Alabama through it. And, it's a special place. We love football here. And the women, they talk about football just as much as the men. So don't come here half-stepping.
You're about an hour from me, 60 minutes. I go through Bruton sometimes when I'm coming home, depending on where I'm coming from. But, yeah, I've always liked Bruton.
Right.
Used to what was the tight end's name? He played at Alabama. I used to do radio with him. Good guy years ago. Curly-haired guy.
I'm trying to think of his name. Oh, my goodness.
Man,
I know exactly who
I got to ask Ryan Fowler. He was on when I was on Ryan Fowler's show. We had him on there with us, and we'd talk football, and he was from Bruton, so I know Bruton is known for its football.
At T.R. Miller.
Yeah, he was a tight end.
Yeah, well, he played. I think he played quarterback too here at Bruton football.
Oh, did he? Okay.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, man. Look, we love it here, man. We do. We really do. I wanted to talk to you about well, people, they're saying like the difference in the teams and stuff like that. It's one thing that never changed, and if you look back at all the games we did good in, like the Georgia game and the Cincinnati game, there was one thing that was always the same in those games, and that was the offensive line. The offensive line is playing outstanding.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's going to change in the next game neither.
Look, the offensive line's why Alabama won both of those games. I mean, they beat up. They basically slowed down Georgia and were able to go fast and do all the things that they were supposed to do. They freight trained Cincinnati. I mean, freight trained them.
Right,
I mean, like
they did.
And I don't want to take anything away from Brian Robinson, but I'll tell you what, that offensive line was just brilliant. They just were physical and the run blocking. And look, they're going to have their issues. It was good to see Latham get in there. I know Ikior was injured. Owens is supposed to be fine, but he was banged up. And they would just bring someone else in, and they would pick it up. And I think that the future of the offensive line next year is going to look a lot like last year's offensive line at some point, But these guys, give them credit, man. I mean, look, they took a lot of bumps at the beginning of the season, and in the two biggest games, they were their best.
Yes, sir. They took a lot of heat. They took a lot of heat from everybody. I mean, commentators from hometown, commentators from the national news. I mean, they were talked about around the world. They had to get it together. And like you said, that Auburn game, that's where it changed. Because when Nick Saban came out to that game, he was like, it's just different. Like, they came together. They put together. The practices are different.
Mm-hmm.
They're practicing with a whole new tune. And it's wonderful to see that type of stuff. So definitely, I got to give it up to the offensive line. Alabama been rolling Roll Tide, and I love it, man. I do. I really do. I talk to a lot of trash talkers all the time, and like I said, I got on page. So I got a bunch of good friends, and man, I'm telling you, like the seniorities and the Curtis Wrights and the Ashley Longs and the Chevron Paynes and Miss Payne and Derek Simmons and the E.J. Earthleys of the world, man. These guys are professional trash talkers, and I love them. And they root for their own team. Some in Florida, some in Georgia, some Alabama, some Auburn. So I had to keep up. And these guys are the best of the best when it comes to talking trash. And one thing I always say, I love getting on here talking to you, Mickey G, because I feel like you really bring it to it when it comes to understanding football and getting it out there. And I love the job that y'all do, man. It's wonderful.
Well, I appreciate it. Look, I know about trash talk. We had a guy on here that was who was from Hightstown, New Jersey. I grew up in Hightstown, but I lived there for 3 years when I was a kid.
Wow.
I went to middle school and high school there for those 3 years, and I just remember getting there. And to be able to survive, you had to be able to talk. I mean, you had to be able to talk trash, and there was a delicate balance between being able to talk trash and not start a fight. Like where there's got to be enough humor in it where it's not mean spirited. You know what I mean? Like you can go at somebody and like right. It is an art form. Yeah. So no, I totally get it, and I love that about the message board. I love it when you guys get into each other, but you do it in a way that isn't mean spirited. It's funny. I can't tell you how many times. And sometimes you guys get me cracking up right here on the air too. You might make a comment about me. I remember when somebody they said that Trey Hannity looked like the guy from this movie, the pianist or whatever it was. And I still laugh when I see that because
Trey, you gotta get him, Trey. You gotta get him back. Trey, you can't sit back and take it.
That was last year though. He's got a clean look now. We did a show on after the game Friday. He came in clean. He got a new cut. Oh man.
Yeah, look, Alabama Crimson Tide. I want to get my little trash talk on. Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm not worried about Georgia. And I know that's crazy to say because how they did what they did when they did what they did to Michigan. Okay, that's cool. That's Michigan, That's Michigan. I look at who Georgia plays. Georgia's got to play Tennessee, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, a beat up Florida, which I think Billy Napier is going to change that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And South Carolina. All right, you hear those names, you're like, okay, that's good football. But then when you go over to the West and you look at who Alabama got to play, and you look at the LSUs who still have 5-star players on their team, they play down to weak opponents, but they play up to good opponents. And you got to turn on, you got to play Ole Miss, and you got Texas A&M over there. Arkansas is just making a jump for joy over there. And you got Auburn who always brings it. And it's just, and people are like, well, Georgia's gonna beat Alabama. Well, look who Alabama have already played already. Look who they have got to go through out every Saturday. It's a different jungle. I'm not worried about Georgia in that fact. I'm worried about Alabama not playing Alabama games.
Right. But I don't think that's a worry. David, I don't think you need to worry about that. I think if Georgia beats Alabama, they're going to have played a hell of a game.
Yes,
Alabama's coming in like the champ. And I don't think it's going to be one of those games like where, and I love Tua, and I'll tell you this right now. Tua is my favorite player under Nick Saban. He's one of my I love the guy. I got his
good guy.
Daniel Moore. I like everything about him. But that game, he was terrible. I mean, he threw that pick six at the beginning of the game, and he was dealing with, I guess, some injuries. I don't know, but it just wasn't a Tua type of performance, right? And Alabama kind of gave that game to Clemson. Although Clemson did a lot of things right in the game, when Alabama had a chance to really put pressure on them, Tua threw that pick six, and it just changed the game. At the beginning,
Right.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think Alabama's going to – I think that the one good thing that you can count on with Bill O'Brien is that he's going to play it – he's not going to put them in a position to make a mistake like that. I don't think.
Right.
And in these games, when you're talking about all the pressure now is on Georgia. All the pressure's on Georgia. They lose to Alabama again. That Kirby might just – who knows what's going to happen. They're depressed already.
Georgia got to win. They got to go in. They got to win this game. They can't go in and lose this game, which I think they're going to do. Alabama is keyed in, locked in. You've been hearing about them talk about staying concentrated and dealing with the task at hand. It's ice cold running through their veins. It's colder than the heart of a Nazi.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They are going in. They're not going to play. They're not going to play at all. And Georgia, you're going to have to come with it, baby. You're going to have to come with it. It ain't going to be no fun day for y'all. I promise you.
Yeah, I agree, man. All right, anything else before I got to get a couple more before I end it tonight? Dave, it's also great to hear from you, man. Anything else before I go to my next call?
No, Mickey G, look, you have a great one. Roll Tide, I hope we win the national championship. I got more pride in our team. I think we're going to get it done this year. I think it's all year. And, man, love you guys, man. Y'all stay safe.
Hey, Roll Tide. Happy New Year. That's David from Bruton, David Gaines, who likes to call in and loves his hometown. And I'll tell you what, that's cool. I like that kind of pride. All right, let's try to get to a couple more calls before we pack things up tonight. We've been on the air almost an hour and a half. Who's this and where are you calling from?
This is Daryl from Huntsville.
Daryl, what's up, man?
Man, I've been trying to get to you, man, but they own you. They've been on you like like they're hungry for Thanksgiving dinner. I've tried my best to call you, but man, it's been rough.
You're here now, and I'm glad that I took your call. It's good to hear your voice. Happy New Year.
So let me make two quick corrections here for our last caller. Walter Lewis was not the first black quarterback to start at Alabama. Excuse me. He was not the first black quarterback to play at Alabama. The first black quarterback to play at Alabama was Michael Landrum against Vanderbilt in 1979, who's in jail right now for a triple murder. Walter Lewis was the first black quarterback to start at the University of Alabama. Now, that is correct. Now, since we got that out of the way, Mick, let me give you some credit. I listened to the program even though I couldn't get in the night that we beat Georgia. And you were the first person I heard. After all I heard all these sunshine soldiers talking about the Georgia game. Well, if we win, if we don't win, we had a great season. We didn't really expect it. Everybody was predicting that we're going to get destroyed by Georgia. You were the only person that said out loud that we would not beat Georgia. I like that. I like it. Okay. Also, Mick, let me give you some more credit. When Bryce Young's aunt called in and she started lambasting you about you're doubting Bryce because of his size, you're not giving Bryce his credit, you stuck to it. You said, I never said anything negative about Bryce. I like Bryce Young, and I've been with Bryce Young on his wagon since it started to roll. So you showed a lot of class right there, Mick.
Well, they're both true. I'm glad I was wrong about the Georgia game. I mean, I ate some crow that night, Daryl, and it was good.
Yeah,
put a little hot sauce on it.
See, a bunch of callers called in. They felt the same way. They just won't admit it. They felt the same way. Because this is what I said. I want you to remember, if you can remember what I said. I know I'm asking a lot. I said this. I said, I've seen Georgia play 6 games. The front 7 is awesome, but nobody's been able to test that secondary because ain't nobody had time. I said, we can block and test that secondary, we'll beat Georgia. Mm-hmm. And that's what I said. See, Michigan, what people don't realize about the Michigan game, Michigan is tailor-made for Georgia. Power running game.
Hey, I said that too, by the way.
Limited passing game. Yep. They can't stretch the field.
No. They can't play fast. They don't have speed.
That's right.
They play in a conference where they ran over Ohio State. Look, I might have been wrong about Georgia, but I'll tell you what, I was dead on about the Georgia Michigan game. As a matter of fact, I was on radio in Chicago on Friday before the game, and I told everyone that they needed to go to the casino and put every dollar they had on Georgia for those exact reasons.
Exactly. I mean, you just, if you just watch the game, and I watched about 4 Michigan games this year. Michigan, a lot of times the games they won, they out-schemed, give credit, they out-schemed, which is coaching. But at the end of the day, when they said this stat last night, the night of the game, they said the Michigan roster has 2 5-stars, 23 stars, and everybody else is a no star. Basically what they were saying.
I heard him say that too.
You remember saying that?
Yeah, I heard him say
That's
that.
all you have to know right there. They looked at compare the Georgia roster to the Michigan roster. There's no comparison.
Well, the funny part, Daryl, is that for some reason, the media, and this is what Nick Saban was talking about, is Georgia lost to Alabama. Alabama plays a scheme that was built to play against that particular defense because it's Alabama's defense. They know that defense. They built the offense because other teams were running that against them, and they were having so much trouble with it that they said, look, we got to do that because it's the kryptonite to our defense. Well, how could they have looked at Michigan for even a second and thought that the team that was giving up less than a touchdown a game and no yards on the ground was just going to come in there and run the ball with no speed, run straight ahead and beat that defense? It just never made sense to me. No,
it wasn't going to make sense.
No.
Because at the end of the day, it was like throwing chum to a shark and not expecting blood to be in the water.
Yeah, right.
And so, now let me ask you this. Have you heard anything on Ekior?
What Kyle gave us an update when he was on earlier, questionable. So he was saying that there's a possibility that he could come back.
Well, see, and what I'm hoping is, Nick has a bad habit of putting you out there with one leg. There's no way in the world Jalen Armour-Davis had any business on the football field. He couldn't turn around and guard Grandma Moses. He was just a cripple out there. How did Nick does that? I don't understand that. You got all this talent. It's time to trust it. Now that's the gripe I always have with Nick Saban. Ever since he left, when in the 2010 when the safety tore a pectoral muscle, couldn't raise his arm, and Nick had him out there playing. He couldn't even knock a pass down. I don't know why Nick will do that, but he started Jalen Armour-Davis, and it was apparent after the guy caught that little 2-yard pass, turned it into a 30-yard game, that he couldn't run, he could not turn his hips, he couldn't do anything.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm hoping he doesn't put Ekior out there as a cripple. Let's just, hey, if we got to go through J.C. Latham, that's what we got to do. I also saw that Owens got hurt. I hadn't heard anything on him.
Yeah, same thing. We're not sure. Kyle thinks that Ekior will be back, and and Owens could be back as well. I think Nick Saban said he could have came back last game, maybe. So, both guys, could be available. I'm sure. Look, this is the national championship game. If you can play, you're going to play. You know what I mean? But the good thing is that some of these other guys are stepping up on the offensive line, and they're doing a damn good job.
Yeah, I thought Latham did a good job for the time he was in there. I didn't see much of him, but I thought he did a good job.
Yeah.
And of course, has been a surprise on the offensive line. He's done an excellent job.
Oh yeah.
McLaughlin.
Yeah. Wow. How about that guy?
He's done an excellent job.
But he's going to have to go up against Davis again, so we're going to have that rematch. We'll see what happens.
Right. And the thing is, pretty much, if you watch the Georgia Michigan game, you pretty much saw Georgia's game plan when they play against us. This time they're going to bring both linebackers.
Yep.
And they're going to try to force the ball out of Young's hand. They're going to try to get him off his spot.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's all about what? Blocking and execution.
Yep. Yep. And going fast. You know what?
And going fast. That's right.
We're going to need Latu. We're going to need Billingsley. We're going to need, we saw Williams making some plays kind of in different spots. I mean, it wasn't like he was making all these catches that were, way downfield. He may have to, play a little closer to the line, but, Brooks has been so good. And who knows who else? But you know what? So Bolden too.
Yeah, I do like the way that Williams adjusted his game. He came off of the 9 route, the deep routes, and started to catch the ball underneath, more like a Mechie. Because they were playing. They were not going to allow us to throw the ball deep. The one time we did, we got away with it. But for the most part, they played 2 deep safeties most of the night. And again, football doesn't change.
No.
If they got 2 deep safeties, you run the ball. If they bring the safety to the line, you pass the ball. I mean, it's just that simple.
Yeah.
This is not algebra. This is not calculus. This is football.
Right.
So let's get ready to play some football and roll tide, my friend. It's good talking to you. And again, I like the way you distinguished yourself when you came out and admitted it, that you thought we were losing, and that the way you handled Bryce Young's aunt, you have all my accolades I can give you, because lesser broadcaster might have got ugly.
Oh no! Listen, I wish she would call in anytime she wants. I thought she made some great points.
She did.
I'll be honest, Daryl. I mean, I wanted Bryce Young to start over. I think maybe you guys remember when I first came on, on this channel, and before when I wanted Bryce Young
over Bryce over
Mac.
Over Mac Jones.
Yes.
And I said, I'm gonna be honest with you. I said the same thing.
Yeah, and I was wrong. I mean, it worked out perfectly.
I said the exact same thing.
And I saw Mac hit a couple of those deep throws early in the season last year, and I said, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to let Nick Saban make the call on this.
Well, let me make my last comment. Mac Jones was something we thought we'd never see.
Yep.
We have had 3 straight All-American quarterbacks, first-team All-American quarterbacks at Alabama. 3 straight.
Yep.
Tua, Mac Jones, and Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Who would have believed that 10 years ago?
Who would have believed that ever? I mean, look, our MO
was
but
3 straight first-team All-American quarterbacks.
It used to
and
be
Mac,
that
we
would have had Stetson Bennett quarterback in Alabama 10 years ago.
Yes, exactly. Mac Jones is one of the greatest deep throwers in Alabama history. And the 3 that I put up there is Tua, Mac Jones, and what was the running back playing quarterback? For 1 year.
Yeah, Blake Sims.
He couldn't read, but he could throw the ball deep on the money.
Yeah.
He couldn't read at all. But if you were deep and open, he's not gonna miss you.
Yeah, right. Accurate.
He wouldn't know miss you.
Yeah.
Well, Mac, have a great evening. Happy New Year to you, my brother.
Hey, you too, man. Great to hear from you, Daryl. And let's talk again soon. All right, roll tide, my friend.
All right,
Happy New Year. All right, let's do one more call. I'm doing overtime right now, but it's because you guys are bringing the gas with these calls today. You're making this show so much fun. Like and subscribe as you hang out with us on a Sunday night. Who's this and where are you calling from?
What's going on, Mick? This is Jarek from Buffalo.
Jarek, see, this is why I took one more call, man, because I was like, you know what? I got to finish with a bang, and it is great to hear from you. Happy New Year. How you been?
All right, man. Happy New Year to you, man. Yep, we got the rematch, Alabama versus Georgia. Very, very excited for this matchup. I have a lot of people that said that, they look impressive. Absolutely, very impressive. But we can't really get into the statistics. We can't really get into the box score. I think that was my first mistake. That was also Mick. That was your mistake.
Yep.
That was a lot of them fans' mistakes. We kind of looked into, Georgia's dominating everybody else. Alabama's struggling against kind of subpar competition, and we just thought, this is kind of a rebuilt year, and Alabama. If we can get it at least to the SEC championship game, we can just look forward to 2022, because 2022, and I still believe that 2022 we're going to dominate, absolutely going to dominate. But that's we can talk about that later. But 2021, for the most part, if there's anything that we learned, is that we just can't doubt Nick Saban. You know, we said the same thing in 2020 when Mac Jones was the quarterback, and you know, when we had a lot of people going to the NFL and we had to go through this COVID year. We did it after 2015 when we lost back-to-back years against Ole Miss. You know, we did it when we lost to LSU, and we never thought that we would get there. Even when we did get there, we just did not think that we were good enough to beat LSU back in 2011. We thought that their defense could stone AJ McCarron. So, you know, we as Bama fans, a lot of us have had these doubtful moments, and Nick Saban has continued to just prove a lot of people wrong. You can't doubt against Nick Saban. You have to put your faith, you got to put your trust in Nick Saban, in the system. And that's one thing that I think that as Bama fans, we can also appreciate is we got to just take it all in, because we don't know how long Nick Saban is going to be coaching for. We assume that he could be coaching for the next decade, but the reality of the situation is that he's 70. And, you know, he can coach for 3-4 years and then just decide to just call it quits. So as Bama fans, we got to take it all in. We got to appreciate this moment. The fact that this team was able to get to a national championship. If you asked me 4 or 5 weeks ago if I thought that this team would make it to this point, I would think that you're on drugs. I think a lot of Bama fans, I think it's kind of a split on that. I would kind of say the same thing. So, whatever the result is Monday, definitely hoping for a W. But either other way, I think that we should all be proud of this team for what they all accomplished. And I'm definitely looking forward to Monday.
Look, Jarek, I mean, no one could sit here and be honest with themselves. And Kyle was one of the only people that said, when he was telling me, I thought he was crazy at the time. But going into that Georgia game with how bad Alabama had played on the line of scrimmage, on the offensive side of the ball, you know, the running back injuries, the way that they looked against Auburn, you know, and Georgia just steamrolling everyone, that they would have even beaten Georgia to get to this point to play them again for the championship. And, you know, and then I'm watching that game, and something happened at the end of the Auburn game where this team just clicked. And it's like, you know, I see a different Nick Saban now. I don't know that Alabama's going to win, but I'll tell you what, they're not going to go into this game and be unprepared. They're going to play Georgia's going to have to play the best game they can possibly play to beat Alabama, in my opinion, because I just can tell Nick Saban realizes that these guys have become champions. And you say, well, how can they become champions? They won last year, but it's a different team this year. It's a different group. But something happened along the way. I mean, I'm still amazed at how this team has turned the season, how they've just hit their stride at this pivotal moment. I just never would have thought it would have happened.
Well, it's weird because sometimes they play down to their competition, and then when they play teams that a lot of people think that can compete against Alabama, that's when you see Alabama play. That's when you see the real Alabama showed up, like against Ole Miss and Georgia. I think another thing that we got to take out, and this is something that we all should have been saying, that's styles of matchup.
Yep.
And Georgia does not match up too well against Alabama. So that's all I kind of said. Georgia, for the most part, but Michigan, again, they do a lot of really good things well, especially with their exotic run concepts. They do a lot of a lot of plays that can kind of fool defenses, that can kind of catch them off guard. But, you know, again, when you're playing against Georgia's strength, Michigan's strength is going against Georgia's strength. Michigan's weakness, which is their rush defense, is going against Georgia's strength, which is their rush defense, which will set up Stetson Bennett to have the game that he had. And again, when I saw Stetson Bennett play, had a great game, but there was nothing about Stetson Bennett. You know, it did not make me change my opinion that I don't think that Stetson Bennett is that good enough to win you a national championship. Georgia's going to have to dominate the line of scrimmage in order for them to win this national championship game. If Georgia's offensive line can't dominate the line of scrimmage against Alabama's defensive line, if it's very similar to how it was last a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, where it's an even matchup on the line of scrimmage, Georgia's getting a little bit of yardage, but they're not really dominating and not setting the tone. Can you really rely on Stetson Bennett to win the game purely with his arm going against our secondary? Because, you know, again, we're not like Michigan. We don't want you just to throw the football and not run the football. We want you. I mean, you can do both either way. If you want to pass the football, Now Alabama has found ways now, especially because Pete Golding has kind of noticed that he simplified the defense,
right?
Where there's not that much communication going in the back end of the secondary like it kind of used to be when we were struggling. Pete Golding is now letting these players play,
right?
So these players so even our backup players that were in the game, like Kyrie Jackson, we're starting to get way more of a rhythm in our secondary now, and it's now we're now letting the 4 and 5 stars in the defensive backfield play. If you want to try to rush the ball, go ahead, because again, we got 5 and 4 star defensive linemen. We're not like Michigan, where we have three and barely 4-star personnel. We have the 5 and 4 star talent to match you up front. We have the size, we have the athleticism, we have the speed, and then you can flip on the other side of the ball. Even though that I still believe that this is the weakest Bama offensive line since 2008, this is still an offensive line that has proven that they can kick anybody's behind if they can play their best game.
Yeah.
And, it's weird because, again, everyone has claimed that, again, this is the greatest front seven of all time, yet they had 0 sacks against Alabama. Now, could a part of that be because of scheming? Maybe. I mean, they rarely blitzed. And by the time they decided to say, okay, we're going to let the dogs loose, it wasn't until the second half. Now, maybe Georgia does that. Maybe Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart will go back to the film and they'll say to themselves, okay, we need to dial up the blitz. We need to rush 5 or 6 guys. We need to make Bryce Young uncomfortable. But if you do that, that's also a cost because again, our receivers are better than every other receiving core that Georgia has faced, including Michigan. Even though we don't have John Mechie, we still have 5 and 4 star athletes that can get the ball underneath and they can be dangerous after the catch.
Right.
We have players that can free up Jamison Williams deep. And if we need to run the ball, we have proven, even behind this offensive line, that is still full of 4 and 5 star talent, that we can run the ball at will if we can establish a little bit of a ground game.
Mm-hmm.
Might not rush for 200 yards against Georgia, but we're going to make you respect the run game. And I think that's something that Georgia, if they want to try to beat us, they got to try to figure out. You have to make us earn your respect. Otherwise, we're going to have the same result.
Well, look, Bryce, don't be surprised if he doesn't take off a few times and run the football. That worked well against Georgia last time. But you're right. And I said this before, I couldn't believe that Georgia didn't look at what was working when LSU and Auburn and these teams are giving Alabama trouble. It started with Texas A&M. They're overloading one side of the line, and guys are getting missed, and they're in the backfield and all that stuff. They had this idea that their front, 4 were going to beat Alabama's, and then they never did. Look, they didn't get any sacks. I think that's going to be different this time, but. I think if Alabama plays their game on offense, that Georgia, as good as they are on defense, is going to look exactly like they did last year, exactly like they did this year, and it'll happen again. I think they're going to take more risks this time because I think they feel like they have to, and if they do, they could get blown out. Then maybe it works and it's a different game and it's another one of those that comes down to the end, or maybe they get ahead and Alabama has a tough time moving and they're blitzing all the time. But I think that there's a risk to trying to do trick plays and all this other stuff. Now, they did one against Michigan and it worked. They had the running back through the football, or was it a flea flicker, whatever it was, and it worked. But I just think you take a risk when you do those kind of things, because if Alabama gets ahead of them, it could look a lot like the second half when these two teams played. And I love the fact that Alabama's an underdog again. I get it. I know why. Georgia has a ton of good players on both sides of the ball. But there's just something about Stetson Bennett, his size, and when you pressure him, he's not very good. And I think Alabama's going to put a lot of pressure on him again.
Oh yeah, and notice we can get pressure without even sending the blitz. Before we used to just you needed us, besides Will Anderson, we needed to send the blitz in order for us to establish pressure. But Darren Mathis has 9 sacks?
Yeah,
he's really coming to his own as that Christian Barmore, Quentin Williams, Deron Payne type of guy at the 3 technique, or maybe not at 3, at 3 technique that can get home to the quarterback. We have Dallas Turner that has stepped up huge for us, right? We have other guys in our pass rushing position. Again, we're not Michigan. We don't have to rotate. We don't have to rotate for like specific, run stuff. You need a run stopping guy. We have to rotate. If we need to rotate, we need to try to get a pass rushing interior defensive lineman. We can rotate
guys that can do both. So we have very, very versatile defensive linemen. Again, Henry T is another guy, again, because, a lot of us were on the, put Jalen Moody in front of Henry T, but
Henry T's playing, man. Yeah, he's playing right now.
He's been a lot more aggressive. He's been way more aggressive. He's meeting running backs in the hole instead of letting them come to him.
Yeah. They smell it. They smell it. They see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's like all of a sudden when the money games have been here, this team has been money.
Yep, and it definitely helps that you have the rat poison. I mean, the fact that Georgia's favored by 3 points, that's something that definitely helps Alabama. That's the rat poison. That's something, if there's anything that Nick Saban's better than a lot of coaches, it's trying to find a way to get his players motivated. And I can guarantee you that -3, that Vegas, that -3, and a lot of and it's not just Vegas, it's a lot of other sports bettors that are favoring Georgia over Alabama. It's something that's going to be brought up. And like Will Anderson said, they, even in that Cincy game when they were favored by 13.5, he still felt like they were disrespected by everyone. And so, so for people that saying that Alabama is not going to be awake for this game, I think that's ridiculous. This is the national championship game. This is the national championship game. This is the team. Alabama knows Georgia. They know how physical they are. They know that, again, they match their size equally. Bama is going to be prepared for this game. As far as injuries goes, how that could impact Bama is something that we're going to have to find out about. If Emil Ekiyor can't go, I think I have 100% trust and confidence that J.C. Latham can step up. That's a 5-star, 350-pound offensive lineman that's big enough to handle some of those guys at Georgia's defensive line.
Right.
So I'm pretty confident in his ability. Even if Kyrie Jackson starts, I'm not really that worried about Georgia's receivers. I'm not that worried about Georgia's receivers. There's the only player in that receiving core I'm worried about is Brock Bowers. That's the only player I'm really that worried about. But for the most part, we need to just limit the explosive plays down the field. Don't let the receivers really get that much involved in the game. If we can try to contain Brock Bowers, but for the most part, force Stetson Bennett to be a passer. Stopping the run is the priority. Force Stetson Bennett to be a passing quarterback. And if they can do that, I think Alabama's going to win this rematch.
Hey, let's hope so. I'll tell you this: Alabama wins this game. Next year looks a lot.
Oh, they're unstoppable.
And think about what they'll do in the transfer portal. I know that the Texas schools are going to go out there and spend every dollar they have for players. So don't be surprised when both Texas schools are, winning games now. Because of NIL, maybe I'm not supposed to say that, but that's basically what's going on. But there's going to be a lot of players that just want to see if they can be the next Jamison Williams, if they can be the next Henry To'o. They come from a different program. They get a chance to play at Alabama, and all of a sudden, their draft status is going up, and then they get championship rings, and Jamison Williams probably wouldn't have even. I was watching Ohio State, and look, they got some guys that can play at the receiver spot, which gives you an idea. If he's the fourth guy, how much is he even going to get to see the ball if he doesn't transfer? I'm assuming that he would have been the fourth guy, and he comes to Alabama, and look, he's going to be drafted, in the first round. I think. I can't imagine it not happening, and he's been his best in the biggest games. So Alabama's going to go out and they're going to keep improving this roster. And then, whatever, happens as far as the players that played this year, the guys that we haven't seen that'll be ready to play next year. This was the season I'm looking at and going, okay, you better get us now. And honestly, I feel like they missed their chance because the way that Nick Saban, that pep in his step, that little twinkle in his eye that I see now tells me that he's pretty damn confident. And when he's confident, watch out.
Well, yeah. Mick, if Georgia's best team can't beat Alabama's weakest team in the last decade, Georgia's never beaten Alabama. That's never going to happen. If you think 2022, Georgia's going to beat Alabama, that's not happening. Alabama will be a much, much better team next year compared to what they were this year. And that's something that we were optimistic about even before the SEC championship game. We were like, you know what, if we lose against Georgia, we will play in the New Year's Six bowl game. We'll probably win that bowl game. And then we really get to have that discussion because 2022 might literally be the best Bama team that might be fielded, because literally a lot of players are going to be returning back. And then if you have to add into this recruiting class with Eli Ricks, who might just be the best quarterback in the nation right now, you have to add him into that play. Jamar Gibbs. I mean, who would ever thought we would get Alvin Kamara again? I mean, I almost cried when we lost Alvin Kamara to JUCO, because I knew that player was going to be special. And now we have him. Now we have an Alvin Kamara-like player on our football team again. Right. So we have that going for us right now. I believe we have Jamar Chase. I think Shaz Preston could be the next Jamar Chase. I think Anderson is a player. I've been watching that kid since he was a freshman. It's just we have a phenomenal recruiting class, stacking on top of our 2021 recruiting class, which A&M took over the quote unquote greatest recruiting class of all time now with they got a 5-star, so congratulations to them. But we have another year where a lot of those players can develop, and it's an exciting time to be a Bama fan. I think I'm super excited for next year. But obviously we got to get it done, Mick, on Monday. Extremely excited for this football game. I think Alabama's going to win. Man, I'm even more excited to talk about the post discussion if we can three-peat potentially. So yeah, Mick, I'm going to let you go, man. Definitely tired out because my Bills stressed me out against the Falcons. But man, definitely we'll catch you in the post game, man, and Roll Tide.
Hey, Roll Tide, Jerick. Always great to hear from you. One of our, as I like to call them, all-American callers, and I appreciate all of you guys for hanging out with us tonight. This was a lot of fun. Went a little over, but when we got this much to talk about, it's hard to say, hey, I'm just going to stop right now. So, maybe an hour longer than we normally do. But I appreciate all you guys for hanging out, making your calls, comments in the comment section. Thank you for the super chats. Don't forget, tomorrow we got all the coverage of Alabama and Georgia, any press conferences, anytime Nick Saban speaks, we'll have that. And then I'll be on tomorrow night at 6:00 with, I believe, Trey Hannity, but it could be Kyle. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I know I'll be there Monday Night Quarterback at 6:00. But thank you guys again. I appreciate it. All your opinions and all your fun tonight. Happy New Year.